Hello everyone, welcome back. It's me, Onyx Harlow here, and today we're going to be looking at a brand new series on this YouTube channel, brand new mapping series that is. This is going to be titled Warped Worlds. Now, let's introduce ourselves to this world really quickly, but first I actually do want to talk about one more thing, is I have a PNG tuber now you can see at the corner of the screen. This is mostly going to be prioritized for non-mapping content, so let me know in the comments if you want this little gremlin to stay on the corner of the screen, because I know it's going to block up some stuff, like right now it's covering all of Oceania. But, yeah, without further ado, let's introduce ourselves to the world. And, obviously, there are a lot of things about it that are, pretty strange, so let's start looking at this. And I do also want to say before we jump into it that I'm going to start editing these videos because I have high expectations for them, and I don't want them to do as the Wixo videos did. I want this to be an actual thing that I can have fun doing because they're actually performing well. Anyways, that's enough yapping from me. Let's jump right on into this scenario video. Starting off over here in North America, let's introduce ourselves to some of the countries here. Starting off, we have the Canadian countries, and I'm realizing now that I forgot to give Newfoundland and Labrador a capital, so let's go ahead and fix that. And there we go, much better. But that's our first country, and we also see that Quebec is independent from Canada as well, but the main Canadian state still exists. Though, however, this region of Canada, British Columbia, as well as Idaho, Washington, and Oregon have broken away from their original states and formed Cascadia. Now's the point where I tell you that most countries are from different realities in their worlds. For example, California down here was in a scenario where America had basically ruled most of North America, and the state of California had expanded itself all the way down through Baja California, and then that thing fell apart, so they just got away with expanding into Baja California. And in our timeline, likely we would have seen them take other states like Nevada, but due to them being kind of more separate in this reality, California isn't able to take those away. Though I will say we do have a disputed layer, and we do see that California claims both Arizona and Nevada, and also over here, Texas claims all of Oklahoma. We'll see more disputes later on, but for now, that's all we're going to be looking at. From here, we look to the southern United States, where we see a reality where the Confederate States of America won the American Civil War and successfully gained their independence. And from here, this thing kind of spiraled out of control because Florida and Texas both wanted too much control, so they were essentially kicked out of the Union. Texas was so controlling that they basically kind of started mini wars against America. The Confederate States didn't like that, so they booted them out. That's also why they claim all of Oklahoma. And Florida, on the other hand, we'll have you create the lore for that because I don't know why Florida is Florida. From here, we move down to the Caribbean, where not much has changed, and we see that these three countries over here are perfectly normal. But from there, we have all these guys united into one country. Simply to put it, it's much easier to do that than have all these guys independent. They took Dominica's capital as well, so if you're wondering which country's capital that is, it's Roseau in Dominica. From here, we see that Hispaniola has united into one country, and from here, we see that Puerto Rico has also gained its independence from the US. From here, you also will notice one thing about North America, and that is Alaska. Now, why is Alaska pink, but they don't have a capital? Well, there's only one country who would own this other than America. Let's be real here. We all know who it is. If you guessed the great and mighty Liechtenstein, you would be correct. And this is our perfect transition to talk about Europe. If you're wondering about South America or any of the other continents, we'll talk about those in another episode. But for now, we're kind of on limited time because there are a few events I want to get done in this video, so we can't talk about it forever. Starting off in the British Isles, we see that Ireland has split into two, and Northern Ireland has kind of assimilated with the rest of Ireland, but due to some divide that happened along the time since then, we see this island country being split into two. From here, we also see that Scotland has achieved its independence from the rest of the United Kingdom, which is likely just now called England, even though Wales is still a part of it. That's for you guys to really figure out, though. From here, though, we see another giant country, and this is Sweden. This is a Viking empire that somehow managed to make it to modern day, and their empire is pretty vast. They control all of Ellesmere Island up here in Canada, all of Greenland, all of Iceland, Svalbard, almost all of Norway except for this little bit that Finland has, and they also have the Estonian islands here. The only thing that they're really missing is actual Swedish land, which is controlled by Denmark, who is kind of a breakaway of this thing. It's just that they hated each other so much that Denmark actually managed to gain independence, but Sweden isn't weak. They have control over basically everything else. From here, let's head on over to Iberia, where Spain is not really doing too good. The central country in the center is Spain, and Portugal is pretty much intact, but they lost control of Catalonia, Valencia, Andalusia, and Galicia, as well as the Basque region, which expanded into France as well. We'll talk more about that in another video, though, because this region is going to have some pretty interesting stuff going on within it. From here, we also see that France kind of fell apart. This France is from a reality where, after the Napoleonic Wars, they were really punished. Brittany was controlled by Britain at one point entirely, but due to this England being from a different reality, we see that this Brittany kind of just was free to operate itself, so they're going to operate themselves. From here, this region was controlled by Italy, but since this reality was formed, this country has declared independence from the northern Italian country, which declared its independence from the main Italian country. That's a lot, I know. Same for Corsica, though. Corsica also gained its independence from this northern guy, who gained its independence from this guy. Let's head on over to the Netherlands, which, as you can see, has taken a bit of Belgium. They've also taken a bit of Germany, and they've lost a bit of their own country. This is because of the law of Germany, which we're going to talk about in a second. But sliding right down on to Luxembourg here. Luxembourg is from a very strange timeline. In their timeline, the Holy Roman Empire kind of just died, and Luxembourg kind of just took control over as many states as they could. However, Luxembourg eventually fell apart due to the same reasons. However, they did keep a large control over this part of Belgium because Belgium was probably the worst part of the Holy Roman Empire. And now Luxembourg's worst enemy, which is the Holy Roman Empire. This is not Germany. This is the HRE. And it's somehow in the somewhat modern day. I don't know what year this would possibly be, but every single country here has made it to the same time, at least. So they all have the same technology. But this Holy Roman Empire state somehow managed to unite and is somehow alive. Don't ask me how. I just wanted to include it in some way. And they probably claim some of these guys, but I didn't really get to that on the disputes map. But as for now, we're just going to focus on you, Hungary, because I was going to come to you next for the disputes, because this Hungary is from a timeline where Hungary revolted from Austria-Hungary when the Archduke was killed in 1914, and they got away with a lot more land by the end of World War I. This is the same timeline as the Slovakia here, though because of the existence of a Bohemian state here, they kind of got a little bit more because Czechoslovakia kind of just couldn't happen because Bohemia existed, so they kind of just went on a little conquest to try and claim a little bit of their friend back, and that went pretty well. As you can see, they own a little bit of Czechia. Anyways, from here, we head down to Yugoslavia, which I'm going to save for another episode because a lot's going to be happening down here. I already guarantee that. But from here, let's start the first event of this episode instead of yapping. Because we head over to Russia. Russia is, in this timeline, not doing so well. In our timeline, Russia is the second strongest country in the world, though what they're doing in Ukraine isn't really supporting that. But let's get a little backstory on Russia. Russia used to control a lot more in this timeline. And it's been 5 years since this timeline formed. and they controlled a lot. So much so that they even won a small war against Sweden, because Sweden used to control a lot of the eastern part of Finland, but they gained that. And the old outline of Russia used to look a lot different. So let's really quickly create that. Okay, I got a little bit lazy with the border in the east, but as you can see, this timeline of Russia controlled a lot of land that the Soviet Union did. They also claimed a lot of Georgia, they claimed a lot of Poland. They didn't claim Kaliningrad, and I got this wrong. They didn't claim this, but they won that in a war. But they also won all of Finland in a war, so I guess it should look like that. But who knows? Either way, I'm going to erase that now, because now we're going to see what really happened since these 5 years, because a lot has happened. The main thing that happened, however, was Poland winning a war against Russia and setting up two kind of observer states in both Belarus and Ukraine. These two countries are pretty obedient to Poland. I wonder if I put it on the alliances map. I think I did. No, I didn't. Never mind. We're going to ignore that for now. But these three countries want their revenge against Russia. And, yeah, Russia, I mean, there's not much to get revenge against. So, yeah, we're going to see a war happening here. I don't know what I was trying to say, but it's definitely not the right word. Anyways, let's start this scenario up officially. Ukrainian forces begin to push right across the border, and they will go ahead and begin to invade into actual Russian provinces, because a lot of this is based on province borders, but a lot of it is also based on river borders, as we can see over here with this border with Belarus. Other ones are weird, and I don't want to talk about it. So, yeah. Anyways, let's go ahead and enable cities, because that's the main thing going on here. Did I not? I know I hit the wrong layer. I hit rivers again. But here we go. Here are the cities. And as we can see, we have a lot of immediate targets. More specifically for Belarus, they're going to launch a huge assault on the first day, immediately taking this major city that I can't remember which one it is because of these borders. Perfect. Anyways, Poland is kind of just rolling right now. They're just having so much fun bullying Russia after Russia did everything they did to them. Next step, they're probably going to go after Germany. But, yeah, Russia is not doing too hot here. And this is going to cause them to kind of fall apart. And multiple different groups will begin to break away. Starting off in the south here, we're going to see a gray group break away in the kind of Azov kind of region. They'll quickly take Rostov-on-Don, and they'll meet up with the border of the Donbass Republic, which we'll talk about more probably after this war or in another episode. But this country is pretty strong, because this region was probably planning to break away next, seeing that Chechnya and Dagestan already broke away. Same for Abkhazia, actually, because that used to be Russian. And yeah, we're going to see them pushing pretty far in. But from here, we're also going to see another country getting involved with this conflict, and that's Georgia. Why? Because Russia still claims South Ossetia, so they want to absolutely destroy any claims that Russia could have over this land by invading Russia. And they're going to do a lot of work, especially since they're invading right into a mountain, but they're going to occupy all that land there. From here, things begin to get so much worse for Russia, as if they weren't already horrible. We're going to see yet another rebellion forming over in the Volga region, and they're very quickly going to start a massive revolt, moving up the river area over here and taking yet another major city, which I'm pretty sure that's Volgograd, even though it started over here, Volga, you know. And this group is an interesting group because they're communists. And a certain someone had something to do with this. This is the Soviet Socialist Republic of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan in this timeline never left the Soviet Union, and so they kind of just are the Soviet Union. They don't go by that name anymore, but they essentially are the successor state to it. And they kind of sponsored this little guy over here so that they can gain a little more influence in core Russia, because Russia kind of collapsed, as you can see, with all these new reality countries forming, especially since the Soviet Union appeared in Kazakhstan, and yeah. So yeah, we're gonna see a very quick fall in southern Russia here as Georgian forces will go ahead and meet up with Grey Team forces in the south. And as well as that, we're gonna see Volgan forces pushing down and meeting up with Georgian forces as well. At this point, they're gonna get cut off from any further expansion. And at this point, Russia is just they have nothing to like win anymore. I don't see any point for them to keep fighting. However, they will. Heading on down to the Ukrainian front, we're going to go ahead and see Russia losing a lot more land in the Kursk region. Eventually, they're going to lose this major city here. Moving up to the Belarusian front, we're going to see that Belarus is continuing to gain land. This is not at all good for Russia. They are like on their last legs, and eventually the government of Russia will collapse. Poland will basically take this as we won, and they're basically going to back up, but at the same time, they're also going to kind of take a little more of this land. So yeah, have fun, Russia. This is like your new life now. You're not going to be a country probably. Anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and drop a peace treaty for this scenario so we can go ahead and move on with the video. Okay, and this is the peace treaty we're going to be looking at for this war, starting off one by one. Starting off on the disputed layer, I know you can't see it, but South Ossetia is no longer claimed by Russia, and on the same like train with Georgia here, we're going to see them annexing all of the northern Ossetian area. Moving right on up, we're going to see that both Volga and the Azov state have gained full independence, and they've also been really heavily expanded on due to some threats that this guy over here may have made to the main Russian government to give them extra land, otherwise they would continue the war against them. So, yeah, I'm so sorry, Russia. This is like the first time I've ever sympathized with Russia. But remember, this is also not Russia, so yeah. Anyways, moving on to the border with Belarus, we're going to go ahead and see them annexing this land here. This one mostly followed a river border over here. They did finish off annexing this province, though, so I'm not going to claim it entirely river change, but yeah. Anyways, lastly, with Ukraine, they're going to go ahead and annex all this land here, hence finishing off this war officially. As for the rest of Russia, they are not doing good, and we can go ahead and disable disputed. We'll worry about that another time. But Russia is now a landlocked country. Is that a sentence I ever expected to say? No. But yeah, I'm so sorry, Russia. And at this point, the remainder of Russia will rename itself to Muscovy, something along that line. It would definitely be based on Moscow to separate itself from Russia, because this isn't Russia anymore. I mean, it is, but it also isn't. So take that as you will. Anyways, from here, we're going to go ahead and head on away from Europe and head on down to South America, because we're going to see yet another war happening over in this region. We head on over to Venezuela, which, as a country in this timeline, it literally just formed. Why? Because when this timeline started, Gran Colombia, it existed. It was pretty fine. It had all of Ecuador, it had all of Venezuela, it had a little more of Amazonas in Brazil here. It was a grander Colombia than Gran Colombia. They also had a little bit more in Costa Rica, but yeah, we're heading over to Venezuela for this event, though, because Venezuela wants their revenge for being a part of Gran Colombia. And so, 5 years after their initial independence war, they're going to go ahead and launch an invasion into Colombia. I know it's a little hard to see with this color, but just bear with it. It's not my fault I chose such bright colors. Well, I mean, I guess it is. Anyways, from here, we're going to see the Venezuelans continuing in. In Colombia, they are probably one of the worst examples of a country modernizing in this timeline. They've lagged behind seriously, and eventually we're going to see Venezuela taking hold over this entire area here. And from here, they're basically going to force a treaty on Colombia, and after Colombia kind of doesn't agree, they're going to continue over this way. Then they're going to invade down here a little bit. And then, okay, fine, Colombia's gonna agree to a peace treaty because they don't want to lose more than they already have. So let's go ahead and look at this peace treaty really quickly. Taking a look at this map now, we can see that Venezuela forced a lot of land out of Colombia. Colombia did get a little bit of the area here back, but other than that, they're still losing by a lot. And Venezuela will annex all this land here. And yeah, poor Colombia. I'm sorry, but that had to happen. From here, Colombia is probably going to go into a full rebuilding stage instead of trying to go on like missions in Costa Rica to try and claim that back, which they've been doing. You'll see a little bit more of that later, though. Not in this episode, some other time. But anyways, we can now move on to our next event, which is over here in Asia, more specifically Central Asia, because Turkmenistan as a country is broken. They were forcefully divided into two by an alliance to the south and around them, because this is a thing. The Trapezoid Alliance is pretty scary, and they all ganged up on Turkmenistan. Why? So they could link up Kazakhstan and Tatarstan to Persia and Balochistan. That sounded like a whole bunch of what we were, but you'll understand some other time. But basically, Turkmenistan lost a war to the Trapezoid Alliance because they wanted to link up their countries by land, and Turkmenistan is now kind of just facing the consequences for it. And that will be put into a great test because we head over to our good old pal Afghanistan here, which is a timeline where a certain group that controls them now kind of saw a lot of success in invading into some of their neighbors. So they're going to take a huge amount of time considering what their next move is. And eventually they will decide that they do want to control Turkmenistan. Basically, they'll send an offer over out to Turkmenistan, basically saying, give us your eastern two provinces or we're annexing all of you. And Turkmenistan, who doesn't want to fight a war and doesn't want to lose their entire country because they know they will lose, will basically decide to give up half their country. So I guess let's just look at how this ends up looking like. Anyways, I've drawn in the border at this point, and this is all the land that Afghanistan will be annexing. Turkmenistan is not doing too fine, and at this point, the Trapezoid Alliance is kind of getting concerned for Turkmenistan because, should they be worried about this country collapsing and Afghanistan becoming a large power they have to worry about? Yeah, that's not really in their interests. So they're going to go ahead and invite Turkmenistan into their alliance. But Turkmenistan obviously is going to decline because they just fought a war with the Trapezoid Alliance. However, in due time, that might become something that Turkmenistan has to do because of a certain someone here. Anyways, let's leave this region so we can go ahead and initiate the final event for this video, which we're going to be coming over to China for. And I forget if no, I didn't put this on the map. It doesn't matter that much, though, because as you can see, China has been divided into many pieces. Most of the powerful countries on this map have, except for a select few, like Brazil. Mexico is doing pretty fine. India's decently fine. But China, they got split in half. And this has to do with stuff that happened in their own universes. It's not like anything's happened in the 5 years since this reality formed, but this southern Chinese state was initially just Taiwan, Hong Kong, Macau, and a few settlements along Hainan and this peninsula here. Eventually, they managed to win against China in the Chinese Civil War that happened in their timeline, and they successfully united all of southern China. And eventually, northern China kind of just gave up on that, and South China hasn't really forgiven North China for existing. So we're going to go ahead and see southern China launching a conquest in order to unite China under their rule. And at this point in time, forces from all throughout the country will begin to push north, if I can get the right color. But yeah, China is in a really bad situation, more specifically North China, because South China has a massive army that they're going to use specifically to do this fast and get it over with. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's episode. I know leaving it on somewhat of a cliffhanger is not ideal, but if I want this series to do well, it's got to have some like stakes and plot. And that is exactly what I'm doing. When this series is done, I might publish these maps. So I'm going to save each and every episode probably as a different one. Maybe some episodes I'll skip because not much is going to be happening in some episodes. But from here, China is going to have to face a civil war, I guess. Or not a civil war, because they already had the civil war. They're going to have to face a conquest from the south. Anyways, that's enough yapping from me. I wonder if my PNG broke sometime in this video. I don't think it did, actually. That's strange. That never happens. But yeah. Any feedback on the PNG would highly be advised, and I will take it. But in the next episode, we're going to be talking about some new things. So if you want to see this series continue, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and I guess I might see you all in the next one. See ya.